Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the Civic Year. It's great to see members here this evening. I'd like to welcome all members and officers to this Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting and welcome anyone watching online. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work and to undertake a roll call of those attending online.
Thank you, Chair. Can I please confirm that the following officers joining remotely are in attendance and can hear us and we can hear them? First of all, Chris Jeffrey.
Good evening, Present.
Thank you very much. Rumi Bose.
Evening, Present.
Thank you. And Anthony Roche.
Good evening. Yes, I'm here.
Thank you very much. Are there any other officers in attendance remotely tonight that I haven't called out? Doesn't look to be, so we'll go on to rules of debate. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. The normal procedure rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. Voting. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting votes. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? Not seeing any indications, so I will now hand back to the chair.
Thank you. So item number 1 is apologies for absence. We have not had any apologies for absence received. Are there any apologies to report? Okay. So item 2, moving on to minutes from the 24th of March. I'd like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on the 24th of March 2026. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Muntzer.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any comments on the minutes for those who are here? No? Okay, in which case we will vote, please.
That motion is carried, Chair. 1 moment, we will sort that out for you, Councillor Chalmers.
Thank you. Okay, item 3, notification of other business. There is no other business that's been notified. Item 4, chair's announcements. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The recording will be available on the council's YouTube channel as well as on the council's ModGov site alongside the documents from this meeting. 2, members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under chair's announcements on the agenda. 3, for the purposes of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. If things carry on at length, we'll have a break. 4, members are reminded that we have adopted a scrutiny charter which outlines how we conduct scrutiny at North Herts Council, including the need for independence, initiative and integrity. 3 I's. It's important that all members are mindful of this in how they approach the items on the agenda tonight and at future meetings. Full details on the adopted charter can be found on the Council's intranet pages for members. Okay, item 5, public participation. There is no public participation. Item 6, urgent and general exception items. One urgent item has been advised to me since the last meeting relating to Churchgate Regeneration Project update and next steps. At the most recent Churchgate Project Board meeting on the 1st of June 2026, members and senior officers discussed at length the need to include a financial amount as a Part 2 report to protect the level of detail from the wider public and any potential bidders for the work. For reasons of commercial sensitivity, should this financial amount be made public via the Part 1 report, the market would be aware of the amount that North Herts have made available for this service and could bid accordingly. The formal notice of this urgent decision has been published on the Council's website. Item 7, called in items. No items have been called in. And item 8, members' questions. There are no members' questions. So we move on to item 9, which is an information note on the full year performance update on 3Cs 2025-26. And I will invite Councillor Sean Nolan to present. Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, committee members. This is the Council's annual 3Cs report regarding comments, compliments and complaints for the year 2025 to 2026. I will outline key points whilst Chris Jeffrey is online to help answer any questions. Overall, the number of comments received by the Council has decreased compared to the previous year. The number of complaints received by the Council and contractors has increased. Changes are detailed in sections 3.5 and 3.7 of the included information note, driven in the largest part by the waste contract change. Currently, the percentage of interactions, collections or visitors resulting in a complaint is below 1%. The percentage of stage 1 complaints resolved within 10 days was 82%, above the target of 80%. Whilst of 33 stage 2 complaints, only 15 were deemed justified. 13 of these relate to waste. Leisure centre complaints have dropped 50% year on year, with service returning to a consistent level following the contract change a year earlier. The local government ombudsman received 6 complaints for this period, as detailed in section 3.12. As detailed, none were upheld. Finally, the Council and contractors received 202 compliments across a range of services, as set out in Appendix B. Thank you, Chair and committee members. We're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Chris, Jeffrey, do you want to add anything to that before I invite questions?
No, nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. In that case, do we have any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Wright-Mason.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's very well laid out, as always. You kind of mentioned it, obviously, with the increase in overall complaints around the waste contract. Obviously, I've noted that the percentage of complaints justified is obviously quite higher than previous years. I'm assuming that's because, as we all know, there was lots of teething issues with the contract and therefore a higher likelihood that it was a justified complaint, or is it kind of related to anything else besides waste that we know of?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, it was related to the waste contract change. I believe the waste team reported to the committee at the end of last year. I know that there were staffing capacity issues at the time, and so a lot of those complaints were related to that. They just weren't able to get through the amount of complaints that were coming through on time.
Okay. Councillor Winchester.
Thank you. This follows on quite nicely, actually. The narrative around the lower resolution of complaints within 10 to 20 days talks about key staff leaving. Are these staffing issues now resolved entirely?
In the waste team?
Yeah.
Yes, I believe so.
Super. I have a second question, if that's all right. Thank you, Chair. So I note we've got a total of 70% complaints associated with those 2 relatively new major contracts in waste and leisure. I notice this has fallen from a peak, and so it's obviously making some progress But can I ask how these complaints are communicated with the contractors? What timeframes are they given to resolve concerns? And how is that followed up from the NHDC end?
It's my understanding that the leisure centres follow our complaints process in terms of timescales. So at the end of every period, they provide the complaint data to us, and then at the end of every year as well, so I can collate them and provide them to you. So they should be following our timescales as well.
Is there any additional audits that you do, or do you just sort of take their resolution data as read?
That's correct, but I'd be happy to take that away and speak to the leisure team and see if that's something that they're able to implement.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Munster.
Thank you, Chair. Just two questions from me, following on from Councillor Winchester and Councillor Wright Mason with respect to the waste contract. As has already been remarked, this was, of course, a very significant change for residents right across the district, and an increase in complaints when compared to this time last year isn't unexpected. But could I ask, how does this data compare to the internal projections that the council had when implementing this policy? And could you update us as to the lessons of which have been learned, and what we've done since we've identified trends within the complaints which pertain to the implementation of the new waste contract, and as we've sort of seeing that rolled out right across the district and being now embedded within the rota cycle?
Prior to the waste customer service element coming in-house to North Herts Council at the end of 2024, we had the baseline data, so we knew roughly the amount of contact that would be coming in. We do obviously track that on a monthly basis and a day-to-day basis, so we can see what those peaks and troughs are. We obviously know that around the garden waste resubscription period, we get a peak. But since then, and since the waste contract change has happened, we have seen a trough, as it were. We are in a relatively stable position in terms of waste, and that is helped by the fact that the waste team are now fully staffed, as mentioned earlier. In terms of the data around the waste contract change, I'd have to refer to Jeanette Loudon in the waste team, but I'd be happy to have a separate conversation around that. Perhaps we could set something up outside of the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted a little bit more clarity around some of the waste complaints and how we're capturing things. I think a while ago we had conversations about how requests for services, for example, "You've missed my bin, can you please come and collect it?" are distinct from complaints which are, "Why have you kept missing my bin? I'm really unhappy about the level of service." And it's drilling down and understanding how many of these are service requests versus complaints. Have we still kept up that practice? And then also noting the number of complaints received directly to NHDC is 628, but the number of complaints received to our contractors is 222. But then our combined totals are 633 for complaints. So is there some duplication? For example, residents complaining directly to North Herts Council about the waste contract, and then we're having to pass it on to the contractor to deal with? And if that's the case, is there a piece of work around ensuring that we're supporting our residents in getting their complaint to the people that are best placed to help them at the earliest opportunity?
I would say that our customer service team are now well versed in spotting those service requests versus complaints. I'd have to look back at data to see hopefully a decline in that in terms of what we're logging things as. But I would say that things are much better than when it first came in-house, now that the team are more practiced in that area. but I'd be happy to look out some data for you and get that across to you. And then could you repeat the second question? Sorry.
Sure. So looking at the total number of complaints, I'm just trying to balance things. We've received, make sure I'm reading across the right line, apologies. Sorry, 411 complaints directly to North Herts Council. Number of complaints received directly to contractors is 222. Are we confident that we've got people complaining to the right place at first instance? And perhaps is there a way that we can reduce the burden on customer service centre by being clearer about, if you've got a complaint about leisure, it goes to everyone active. If you've got a complaint about waste, it goes directly to the waste contractor.
When we switched from Abasa to Veolia, and we took on the waste customer service element in-house, the complaints now come directly to the customer service team. So that's why there's the drop on the contractor data, particularly for Abasa, because it was within the cutoff of that. And then I would say that the vast majority of the leisure centre 3Cs go directly to the contractor there, and we pick up that data from them at set periods. There may be some that spill over to us for the leisure team to deal with, and that's outlined on Appendix B on the line for leisure. But as I say, the vast majority are being dealt with by the contractor.
Okay, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Probably something to pick up on what you just said, Chris, about the trend. Obviously, the data graphs in the report don't show the monthly trends; it just shows the annual trend. So I was just trying to understand if you think that all the waste transition issues are now over and we're down to a level of complaints related to that is stable and it may even look better than it was historically. I noticed in paragraph 3.4 it talks a bit around the number of complaints in April and May being very low, looks like historically lower than even normal. So just wanted to make sure that's the right interpretation, that we think we're now down to a position where we're over the hump of complaints and we're at a as good as, if not better, situation than we have been historically. Is that a fair interpretation?
I would say that it is fair. Looking at the monthly trends for when complaints came in, as you rightly said, the start of the year was fairly quiet, and then we received a peak in October and December. Obviously, October following the waste contract change, there was a big peak in complaints, particularly around missed bins, and then similarly in December when there was an issue with the reporting and the system, which I think would have been outlined in the waste paper that would have come to ONS last year. So yeah, we do track those trends, and I would say it's in line with what we expected, and particularly now in June, things for waste are pretty much business as usual. We're not seeing those spikes anymore.
Thank you. I would just suggest that we don't go too far down a waste-specific rabbit hole, given that complaints are only part of the picture. Just to mention that KPIs relating to waste are available on our DGen that you can look at. We discussed last time briefly the KPI on missed bin collections per 100,000 lifts, and that data is on IDGen now. So just to mention that there are other contributing factors, and I think we shouldn't spend too much time burrowing deep on waste. And if we want to explore that further, we should maybe focus on that in a separate meeting. But with that in mind, Councillor Prescott.
Thank you. On the subject of waste, no, I'm only kidding. While we're talking about complaints and compliments, I'd like to record a vote of thanks to Jeanette Loudon, the shared service manager. When the contract changed, we had a real spate of issues with street sweeping in a number of villages in my ward, particularly Barley Village. And Barley Parish Council are particularly vocal about the issues. And there had been some problems. And I have to say, Jeanette went out of her way to understand the concerns of the residents. She turned up at a parish council meeting, which was brave of her. She was very well received, and she's not failed to be quick in responding and effective in responding whenever I've asked or passed on concerns from the parish councils. And I think that goes a long way towards reducing the number of complaints before they become complaints. So I think she needs to be recognised for that. And thank you very much, Jeanette.
Thank you. Well said. Councillor Munster.
Thank you, Chair. And could I also just add thanks to Martin Trotter as well, who works in the waste team, because he also has been incredibly responsive to all of the issues that I've raised with him. And certainly all of the officers within that team have been kept incredibly busy. And no doubt that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people across the district who have had their bins collected when they've been missed because of the efforts of that team. But could I just ask Chris a question? I appreciate that there are capacity constraints within this department, and in seeking to drive efficiencies and to deal with complaints within the specified time period, have we employed the use of artificial intelligence?
Or any intelligence for that matter?
Not in that sense. We have AI on the telephone line. It's able to answer kind of basic inquiries that residents call in with. And that's answering thousands of calls for us over the year. But in terms of complaints, obviously, if someone wants to complain, they do come through to speak to us, so we can handle those appropriately. But it does provide that information up front, depending on what they're calling about.
And could I just follow up and ask, is there any program within the foreseeable future that will be employed, i.e., AI, that will be employed in place of that human interaction? Because I think particularly when dealing with complaints, particularly those of a really sensitive nature, it's really important that there is a human on the other side of the phone or on the other side of the email. And that people don't want to be engaging with a bot or a chat bot or whatever they're called.
No, I'd like to reassure you that we don't plan to replace anyone with AI. It's there to support us as that assistance. And if it's able to take away that low-hanging fruit before it comes through to the team, that allows the team that time to deal with the more complex calls that are coming through and deal with those sensitive complaints that our residents have. So yeah, it's very much a supporting tool rather than replacing anyone.
Okay, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and shift the questioning to a different sea about compliments. Not waste related. Just for bonus points from the Chair. The paragraph 3.9 talks about the number of complaints, the 170 compliments. 173, sorry. And it mentions Careline as the highest number, which is great to hear because that's fantastic service. Could you give us a flavour of what some of the other areas of complimenting or compliments have been, please?
Yes, yeah, that's all outlined in Appendix B, which service areas received the number of compliments. I'd be happy to share any specifics if there's any areas that you would like to look at.
Appendix B. Sorry, I haven't scrolled down that far. Thank you.
Councillor Billing.
I just wanted to ask whether any complaints had actually turned into compliments. Because I know sometimes that a complaint, someone who can be really angry or frustrated can raise a complaint and actually gets resolved, and sometimes it can turn into a compliment to the person that's resolved it.
I don't have any specific examples, but we do pride ourselves on our customer service and the ability to turn situations around where possible. But in terms of specific examples, I don't have that right now for you, I'm afraid.
Okay. Are there any further questions from any member of the committee? No? In which case, this is an information note only, so we don't need to vote. So I'll just thank Councillor Nolan and Chris Jeffrey for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to item 10, which is exclusion of the press and public. I propose that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 4 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the said Act as amended. May I please have a seconder? Councillor Winchester. Thank you.
Happy to second, Chair.
In which case we need to vote on that, please.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you. In which case we need to move into private session. Thank you. So on to item 12, Churchgate Regeneration Project Update and Next Steps, part 1. And I'm going to invite Councillor Bryant to present once again. Councillor Bryant.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. As previously explained, as the Executive Member for Enterprise is not able to attend this evening's committee, I'll be presenting this on her behalf. I am the Chair of the Project Board. I am pleased to present the following report. This report marks an important point in the progression of the Churchgate Regeneration Project. Since full council in July 2025, the Project Board and team have worked to properly test the most important and challenging issues associated with the future of the site, including viability, parking, public realm, the future of the market, governance, delivery models, and the long-term sustainability of Hitchin Town Centre. Over the past year, that work has been undertaken in considerable detail. It is important tonight is that the Council is now in a fundamentally stronger position than it was 12 months ago. We now have a much clearer understanding of the site and constraints, a stronger technical and financial evidence base, a better understanding of viability and delivery challenges, and importantly, greater insight into market appetite and delivery expectations. The soft market engagement work undertaken over recent months has also confirmed that there remains strong confidence in Hitchin as a place. Through early engagement with developers, investors, and regeneration specialists, the feedback has consistently been that Hitchin is viewed as an attractive and credible town centre regeneration opportunity with strong long-term potential. At the same time, the market has also been clear it is a complex and finely balanced scheme, which requires careful feasibility work, detailed delivery planning, and a proportionate approach to risk before any future delivery route is determined. That is precisely why the recommendations before members tonight are focused on the next stage of feasibility, viability, and delivery planning. This is not a developer appointment, nor simply a continuation of the previous visioning work. The Council is now seeking to appoint specialist regeneration expertise to work alongside the project team in refining a deliverable scheme and supporting the transition from strategic ambition to delivery, planning, and implementation. The phased approach being proposed is designed to ensure that investment, funding, and risk remain proportionate to the level of certainty available to each stage of the project. This reflects both the scale and the complexity of the opportunity and the consistent feedback received through market engagement regarding the most appropriate and credible route forward for both the Council and potential future partners. This enables the Council to continue progressing the project in a measured and controlled way, retain strategic oversight and decision-making control, further test viability and deliverability, and reduce uncertainty before any future long-term delivery or partnership decisions are taken. Ultimately, the ambition remains to deliver a viable, high-quality and deliverable regeneration scheme capable of supporting the long-term vitality, sustainability and future success of Hitchin Town Centre. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I invite questions, can I just make a quick clarification that there was an update to the paper on this item, which made a couple of small corrections, including removing references to the word disposal with respect to the site, which was inserted by mistake. So with that in mind, can I invite questions? Councillor Winchester.
Thank you, Chair. It's really good to hear that the Churchgate project is regarded as an investable opportunity. Does the reference to viability indicate a softening of the stance towards quality delivery and specifically the proportion of affordable housing? Oh, I beg your pardon. I just said, so it's really good to hear that the Churchgate project is regarded as an investable opportunity, but does the reference to viability testing indicate a softening of the stance towards quality delivery and specifically the proportion of affordable housing that you're going to be requesting?
My short answer is no. I'll pass over to Rumi for the detail.
Apologies, just having trouble unmuting myself. Yes, building on Councillor Bryant's short answer, no. Quality remains a central objective of the project. The council's ambition obviously is not simply to maximise development value, but this is a high quality mixed use regeneration scheme that responds appropriately to the town that Hitchin is, celebrating its heritage, its markets, its public realm and river frontage. So what this means in terms of the next stage is it will allow the council precisely to test that design quality and viability and deliverability together as a holistic package rather than treating them as separate issues, quality versus viability. We'll be looking at it in the whole. Importantly, the council retains strategic oversight in this next step, so that decision-making control, that quality control throughout the process, including design principles, the aspirations for high-quality public realm, and the overall quality of the scheme remains central and within our control.
Councillor Munster.
Thank you very much. I've got two questions. The first somewhat follows on from Councillor Winchester's point surrounding affordable housing, because I think we all appreciate that if this project is to proceed to implementation, it's going to cost the taxpayer an awful lot of money. And therefore, we've got to be, as a council, looking at all available options in order to try and reduce the burden that is going to fall on the taxpayer. And as such, when we have been assessing the feasibility with market partners, have we also been looking at potentially having a very low number and a low percentage of affordable housing in order to potentially offset the costs of this project? And is that something which is going to be taken up as we are looking at a variety of different options? That's my first question.
Thank you. Yes, with all of the viability, we are looking at different levels of affordable housing to help us to overall test. But similar, when we're looking at other things like massing and other costs, we are looking at across all of those items. And with the development partner that we work with, we'll continue to do that and also test that with them against the work that we've currently undertaken.
Thank you for that. And that is reassuring to hear, because I'm sure that if there is an option for people in Hitchin and indeed people across North Herts as to delivering the Churchgate project at a lower cost, but with no affordable housing and not delivering the project at all, people would choose the former. My second question relates to the impact of local government organisation, because on the current timeline, which is detailed in, I think it's 8 point, I can't remember, but this project obviously goes well beyond the mandate of this authority on the government's current timeline. So at what point do we find ourselves constrained with the ability to act and to commit funds to this project because of the impending reorganisation of local government?
My understanding, but I will also refer to Anthony, but we won't be constrained. However, when the shadow authority is established, which will be 2027, then things which are of
X value, and I'm sure Ian will have the exact values, would have to go through the shadow authority as well as through ourselves. It will be another board that would have to go to. But that's not, I wouldn't say that's constrain us. That's just ensuring that we go through the correct process. Anthony, do you wish to add to that?
Well, the specialist subject of local government reorganisation was mentioned, so I should probably say something, shouldn't I? Steve, you're correct. It's called a Section 24 direction. So that's a direction that the Secretary of State puts in place that puts financial restrictions on the predecessor authorities. That kicks in from when the shadow authorities start to exist in May 2027. So any financial decisions over that threshold can still be made by current authorities, but as an additional step, they also need to be signed off by the shadow authority for the new unitary. What that will mean in practice remains to be seen, because it is possible for essentially, well, that's the best way of describing it, the shadow authorities to effectively create almost a scheme of delegation of things that they're not interested in looking at. So to give an example, an individual care package for someone at the county council, for a service user of the county council, could easily trigger those thresholds. But you would expect an agreement to be put in place from the shadow authority to the current county council to say that those wouldn't need separate sign-off. Something like a town centre regeneration scheme, I'm certain, would, though, need to go before it. But as I've said in many places at many times, if we have come up with a deliverable, viable scheme that makes sense for North Herts Council, then it should also make sense for the new unitary council as well. So I don't think there is anything to fear from those additional governance steps if required.
Sorry, Anthony, just to say your audio is coming through quite distorted. It's quite hard to follow what you're saying. So I don't know whether you might be able to look at that in case of chipping in later on in the meeting.
Okay.
Steve, did you want to add something? Did you? I thought you had your light on again. Sorry.
Off.
Okay. Yeah, easily done. Councillor Winchester.
Thank you. So I've got a little question on this process here. Kind of recapping a little bit. As I understand it, we asked consultants what we should do next, and they said, let's get some more consultants. And then we went and talked to developers, and they said, you should take out all the risk for the developers. And I'm just asking about the possibility of some conflict there, and whether our existing partner might be interested in bidding for the work. And are we clear that we're not just paying to remove risk for ourselves, but we are paying to reduce some risk which we would expect to be borne by the development partner should we have a suitably robust contract?
In terms of who would be doing the next piece of work, it wouldn't be our current consultants. It would be a totally different potential development partner or similar to that. So it isn't additional to the work that they're doing. It's what we feel that needs to be undertaken due to the complexity of this project, and also as the market is also, they feel that this piece of work, similar to our consultants, will assist us to fully analyze this. It is a joint piece of work, so this work has to be, or it's advised that this work is done to ensure that we're in a better position. If we didn't do this work, there's a danger that we go to the market without undertaking this. And that is why we feel that it is an important step that we undertake.
Councillor Chalmers.
Yeah, I just wanted to a bit I could hear from Anthony. He used words like should, which again always worries me because should doesn't necessarily mean will. When he was saying, the new shadow authority should agree with what North Herts does and its priorities. Will it? That's the question. And the other question I wanted to ask was about the joint committees, because I know that even before May 27, there will be the new joint committees set up for the new Unit 3 authority, and actually how much, and I think that's again another grey area as far as I can make out, on whether that can sort of interfere and say, we don't like this. This is a huge amount of money that's been spent here, which will actually be us, the new authority. So there is a lot of grey area here, and I just think it needs to be put out and explained that it is, not as if it's a statement as if it's not going to happen.
Can you just clarify the question?
The question, it was more of a sort of a question back to what Anthony was saying, really just sort of questioning some of his statements seemed to be making out to be that it was going to be very plain. I was saying there's a lot more uncertainty in here than is perhaps being made.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bryant.
This is something that we've looked at in detail, and we have plans, detailed plans, month by month plans, to the point where we will have shadow authority. An important point is when we go to planning. So the aim is to go to planning and get and be in that process before the decisions are taken out of our hands, as it were. As for the joint committees, I've been in a couple of meetings this week about we're at the point of making the plans to make the plans for the joint committees. So there's no information about that at all. But there's no reason why, given that we follow our schedule, and given I am chair, I do aim to do that, that we shouldn't be in a position whereby, in fact, we've done the grunt work. We have got a decision about whether how we're going to deliver this by developer, jointly or on our own, and we've looked at we've done the planning. That there's no reason why they shouldn't turn around and say, yes, we will continue with this. And that doesn't matter which size authority we will be in by then, because of course at the moment we don't know. Thank you.
Anthony, I think I saw your hand up. Do you want to come back on this?
Thank you, Chair. I'll leave my camera off in case that helps with the sound issues. The reason why I say should in respect of the shadow authorities is that we don't know the footprint of those shadow authorities, whether it's 2, 3 or 4 unitaries. We don't know who is going to be elected to those shadow authorities, and therefore I cannot possibly speak on behalf of an organisation that doesn't currently exist. That's why I say should, as opposed to anything more definitive than that. In relation to the joint committees, their purpose is to oversee the preparations for the shadow authorities, and therefore it's unlikely that a project of this nature would go before it.
Did you get that? Yeah, okay, good. Councillor Wright-Mason.
Yeah, it's kind of piggybacking on the previous question, because I think it's a fair one about LGR. I think clearly brings some risk. But I've just given my knowledge of, say, a Stevenage or in Hatfield, certainly in Hatfield, they've obviously had lots of major regeneration projects there recently. I would imagine that although it's very big in the history of North Herts, it probably is quite a bit smaller than other projects in other councils we would join. So I just wonder if you have any idea where a project of this size would fit in relation to recent projects and kind of our new friends, right?
Who wants to take that? Councillor Brown.
Is on the unitaries, we will be with Stevenage, and Stevenage are talking about billions, not millions. They're talking about projects which are at least 20, 40 times the size of this, and they've got a regeneration team, and this is one of the reasons why. Actually, I'm not going to go political, but for North Herts to be to be part of a bigger regeneration team would be an advantage to us. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Fighting with my microphone. Councillor Dares.
There you go. Thank you, Chair. And I think building off the back of Councillor Winchester's question, or what I sort of think was driving that question, and Councillor Wright Mason's point, what I'm hearing is that it sounds like there's a reason we feel that we need to have external consultants do this work rather than our own in-house team, with reference to this council's experience and perhaps learning from other large-scale projects that we've undertaken. What are officers' views, I guess, on this is a very long-winded way of saying, why do you think, Steve, we need to appoint external consultants rather than doing this work ourselves? There we go. I'll cut to the chase instead of trying to make it fluffy.
I think you're going to have to answer that one, Steve.
Similar to why we appointed Rumi as our project manager, it's ensuring that we have their expertise involved in this important project. And we don't have that internally. And also, so we can test the market properly. And again, we can't do that internally. The only way we can do that is by doing this next stage. So it is vital for us to be able to do that because we cannot do that work internally.
And in your experience, having been around and seen some previous projects, what are the risks to our success and potential ongoing budget risks if we don't get that external advice and expertise and support?
Thank you. So from other projects, which we've learned from, not having that external expertise, we know that has significantly impacted on cost. It's significantly impacted on time. So again, this is a way of using money to ensure that we get the right advice to put us in the best place forward so we can move forward on the project.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions. Is there anything to be added from anyone online? Anyone want to add anything to responses that have been given? I will take a silence as no. Great. Okay. In that case, we'll move on to the recommendations. And I would just like to propose slight change to the recommendations just to make sure that it's clear what it is that we're actually recommending, even if they're slight mouthfuls. So bear with me a second. I propose recommendation 2.1 that the recommendation to full council and to cabinet is noted, and that at the overview and scrutiny committee also note the provided update and next steps of the project. And amended recommendation 2 for clarity that the overview and scrutiny committee recommends that cabinet recommends that council approves the allocation of additional funds referencing the part 2 report. Hopefully that's clear to everybody. Well, we'll see each other again in 2 stages further of that line, and we can have another debate at the council. Can I have a seconder for those recommendations, assuming they're clear, please? Councillor Winchester. Thank you. Is there any debate? Councillor Munster, we couldn't possibly have done without you jumping in.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. And just a few thoughts on this, because I think with every infrastructure project, whether it be in the commercial world or whether it be in the public sector, there is always a tipping point whereby you have spent money on a project, but the money of which you have spent can be written off because it is not a significant amount. And whilst that is disappointing, it is not fatal. Or you reach a point whereby you have spent so much money on something that you have to, you pass the point of no return. You have to continue to spend money to make that project happen, regardless of anything else. And I fear with this project in particular, we have reached that latter point whereby it doesn't matter what happens in the future, we will continue as an authority to commit money to this project. The concern that I have is that the initial estimates that we were provided for this work were willfully inadequate. And whilst I appreciate there has been significant turbulence within the construction sector, within the national and the global economy, still the variance which we see in the figures that were initially provided and the overspend which we are seeing with this project currently are quite frankly unacceptable. And therefore, what officers and what the administration need to do is they need to take stock. They need to look at the phased approach which they are adopting, and they need to be more realistic in the costs of which this council is currently currently focused on, but also the costs which are likely to arise, and additional costs which are likely to arise as we get further down the line. And it would be very useful for that to then be provided to members, for us to have a far better understanding of what the total cost of this overall project to get to the end of the planning and pre-development phase in 2027, 2028 will be. Because this is, as has been remarked many times this evening, the most ambitious project this council has undertaken. Now, I want this project to succeed, but not at any cost. And we really have to ensure that measures are taken to prevent the costs spiraling out of control. And I think we are very close to that precipice.
Thank you. Do we have any other contributions to the debate? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. I will do my best not to rehearse what may or may not be said at Council. I think Councillor Munsell's given us a warm-up of that. I will have words with myself for making the space political. I apologise, Chair. Right, so I think what we're being asked tonight is to sort of scrutinise the proposal that's being put forward to facilitate the additional work that officers and our exec team have identified is necessary to ensure that the most robust, most well-considered, most marketable and most attractive proposal for Churchgate goes forward, and in order to mitigate those costs spiralling that Councillor Munster has identified it just now. I think taking the experience of the Hitchin Town Hall and North Herts Museum, which this committee previously looked at, although I appreciate that's before many members' time, and the outcomes of that particular task and finish group, it is important that this work takes place and that we are in the strongest position pre-planning phase, pre-appointment of a development partner, to make sure that we know what this project is going to deliver, we know that it's viable, and that we're not making those last-minute changes during the scope and the build-out of the project, because that's the point at which the costs spiral out of control. I think what I'm hearing from the report, from the multiple workshops that members have been able to attend, the various consultation events, and a lot of transparency on a significant project, is that our team have really given this considerable thought, and I have an element of trust, I think, that I haven't had when this council's looked at previous large-scale projects in respect of Churchgate and the approach that's being taken. I think that it's incredibly brave of officers to come to members and hold their hands up and say, we're good at what we do, but we also know what we don't know, and we need help. I think it takes a lot of strength for anybody in a professional space to say, we need help. And if our officers are saying to us, it's time to get the experts in the room, then I'm sorry, Michael Gove, I think it's time that we listen to experts, don't you, colleagues? So I think that Overview and Scrutiny's comments have been noted both in part 1 and part 2 by Councillor Bryant and by Councillor Albert and our officer team. I'm certain that they'll have a robust discussion at Cabinet, but from my perspective, I see no reason, unless somebody has something that they've pulled from deep buried secret papers, not to support the recommendation that you've explained and clarified for us this evening, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Well, I'm going to take the opportunity to thank everybody involved, including. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ward, you interrupted my speech.
No, I'm sorry. You could get your warm up ready again. No, I was just reflecting on a conversation we've had, and just thinking we need to bear in mind, yes, there's uncertainties, yes, there can be overruns, but in terms of getting the best outcome for a multi-million-pound investment we made several years ago, it's over 4 million quid or something of that order of magnitude. Then numbers we were talking about earlier on, I think are all part of the greater good of what we need to achieve. I'm not sure the sort of pulling the plug type comments from down there are going to make a lot of sense at this point, personally. So.
Thank you. That's a sensible perspective. Councillor Prescott, now everyone's jumping in now that I've said that we've finished.
No, not really. I don't. Well, firstly, a number of times this evening, people have talked about politicising it. I don't think it's political to voice legitimate concerns, and I don't realistically think, and I certainly don't want to put more words into his mouth, but I don't think Councillor Munster is realistically suggesting we bail out of this project. We understand it. We understand that it's a very complicated and very expensive project, and we also understand that our officers are doing their very best to make it as successful as we can. But we just have concerns, and I think from my point of view, I'm not saying no, you can't do this, you have to stop. I'm just saying be cautious and remember it's not your money, and I think we do. I think the officers do understand that.
Yeah, thank you. That's very fair. Anyone else? Councillor Mason.
I'll be brief, and just to prove it isn't political too. I have to say I've agreed greatly with comments I've heard recently from Councillor Prescott, Councillor Dennis, Councillor Ward, Councillor Chalmers, and all along the same lines. These are large amounts of money that we are talking about, and it is taxpayers' money. We should never, ever lose sight of that. And I completely agree with what Councillor Prescott said earlier. But also, I do commend what we've heard tonight. It seems to me it's wholly sensible what's being proposed. We need to get this right. Those of us who've been in Hitchin a while have the memories of the museum and associated things around it, and I think it's absolutely right. I completely agree with Councillor Dennis. Let's listen to experts. Let's get it right. And I agree with lots of comments I've heard tonight.
Thanks very much. Last chance, or forever hold your peace. Okay, so maybe I will just briefly summarize. So, I mean, we have had a lot of discussion about the risks, the risk for us versus the risk for the developer, and the appropriate balance in that. We've talked about the fact that we'd all like to see an upper bound on the costs of these sorts of things, and it's clearly there's challenges with that. There's a lot of uncertainty associated with what will happen in later stages of the process, or what will happen with LGR and so forth. We don't want to see any quality or loss in the final scheme as a result of the challenging market conditions, and we want to ensure that this project continues and doesn't get stopped by the LGR process. And we also have discussed about the fact that why this needs to be involving external parties rather than being done in-house. So I think this has been a useful discussion, and thank you all for your contributions. I also want to thank everybody who's been involved this evening and along the way. Thanks to the project board, who are obviously only partially represented. I know we've got the chair of the project board here, but thanks to everyone on the project board for their contributions, and thanks to Rumi and Anthony for contributions online. So let's move to the vote, please, on the recommendations.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thanks very much. And with that, I suggest we take a short break, and we aim to be back here around 15:15. Okay, welcome back, colleagues. So on to item number 13, local government reorganisation funding. I'm going to invite Councillor Ian Albert to present this item. Councillor Albert.
Cheers. Thanks, Chair, and obviously thanks committee today for hearing this paper. I mean, I think we all know that LGR is a huge project. I mean, it's probably, we've talked about a big project in the previous item, but LGR is every bit and probably rather bigger. We made a decision at the budget meeting to allocate an LGR reserves, split £1 million over the next sort of two financial years. And this obviously, this paper is, I think, is really seeking agreement on how that funding will be allocated, including obviously the decision making and report back processes. I think it's important to note here, Chair, that obviously that £1 million of the available funding would be allocated to county-wide costs. Any contribution will be based on a fair share from each council, and that can be approved by the Chief Executive in consultation with executive members. We're asking the Cabinet approve £1 million of available funding to be allocated to additional staffing costs. To note, and I'll touch on a bit more in detail in a moment, that 450,000 of that has already been allocated. Again, obviously, spend can be approved by the Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader of the Council, Executive Member of Resources, except obviously the Constitution already requires a different approval process. Also looking about approving up to 200,000 of the available funding can be spent on training costs. I think it's hugely important in an LGR world to be able to do that. And clearly, as I set out at the start, that cap of £1 million in 26-27 and £2 million overall over these next 2 financial years. Yeah, as I mentioned just now, that clearly obviously are 3 key areas that I'll come back to. The delegated decision, I think colleagues will have seen in the member bulletins, allocated up to 450,000 for 4 posts, 2 in HR, 2 in IT, to addressing emerging significant workload pressures contributing to the county-wide LGR project and other additional workloads linked to LGR. 2 posts in HR, a full-time HR business partner, a full-time assistant HR business partner, and they were for a period of 2 years. And again, similarly, an IT request around 2 posts, again, obviously both for a fixed term period of 2 years. In the case of, say, in the case of that makes up that in IT 250,000, that 450,000, and in HR was 200,000. Recruitment is ongoing but not complete yet for these posts, so we probably won't need all of that allocation. This report sets the mechanism for future use of the funding that was agreed as part of the budget process. And I say, just again as a reminder, that our 3 categories of spend that we're proposing, that the county-wide costs, additional staffing costs arising from LGR work, and I say training costs for our staff to put them in the best place for LGR transition. As appropriate decisions will be taken, subject to delegated decision notice, it's likely that would likely cover staff backfill and allocations to county-wide costs, which are likely to be on the basis of pooling of funds. The Learning and Development Fund, due to the low value of individual transactions and balancing against existing training budgets, will be allocated in tranches. They'll also be monitoring this spend through the quarterly budget reports, which go to FAR and Cabinet. And as stated in the report, the monitoring will need to ensure the individual thresholds are not breached, as well as the overall available funding. Whilst it always won't be precise what costs are solely due to LGR, proposals will go via the Office leadership team for initial views and consideration of whether they meet the criteria, and also be prioritised in the context of the budget available. And I think, as we know, absolutely, you don't need me to tell you that the report notes that significant officer time that there is and will continue to be and will increase supporting LGR project work. As I say, there will obviously be delegated decision notices for most of the spend. Exceptions, they are likely to be learning development, which is fairly low individual values. Where I think we're looking at centralized spend, that would probably be easier to compartmentalize through workstream leads and project plans. Work is directed to LGR. And clearly backfill of posts will also be somewhat subjective, as there could be other factors that are increasing workload. But again, that will go through the officer and leadership team. But we're aware this is currently a fixed amount of money, and obviously we will need to look within the budget next year as to whether that is the right amount and whether we need any further funding over and above these allocations. But I think certainly at the moment we think these are robust numbers, but obviously it is subject to a lot of the uncertainty and obviously the decisions that we wait from government on what the unitary authorities that we will be allocated to. So Chair, hopefully this seems like I think a positive and sort of pragmatic way to take forward these delegations and this important budget. And I absolutely take on board the points made in the previous debate about the importance of obviously making sure that we manage our funds well and effectively, and especially as we're part of this very large LGR project. Obviously, will be opportunities clearly for Scrutiny to continue to look at this, and obviously very particularly for the Finance Audit and Risk Committee to review the spend through their committee meeting. So obviously here asking for that ONS should provide any comments on the recommendations to Cabinet. Clearly, I've obviously got Ian Cooper beside me, and I think we've still got Anthony Rose, who obviously are involved in the day-to-day LGR work, and also be able to provide maybe some answers to any questions you have. So thank you, Chair, for that, and obviously I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Councillor Albert. Do we have any questions? Councillor Winchester, you have fastest finger.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. There does appear to be a little bit of tension in this proposal between spending on new staff and training current staff. And it seems likely to me that, we've already had 450k go to urgent decisions on new posts. The amount that's left for existing staff professional training development is liable to be squeezed, especially for those staff unable to take advantage of it early. Can I ask what guardrails you're putting in place to ensure that the suggested 200,000 allocated to training funds remains accessible to current staff throughout the coming months?
So that amount was set based on conversations with our learning development manager, and actually so far we've done a pretty good job of absorbing a lot of the training requirements that are coming from staff within existing budgets. We do seem to have sort of reasonably generous training budgets. We haven't sort of been cutting them because we've been valuing training of staff for quite a long time. So we have got budgets there already. So I think it's a realistic number. Clearly, the cost of both staff and training goes down as you go through the process because there's less time for them to be either recruited for or to be costing us on training on. So I think it's realistic. But as I said, we need to revisit this probably for next year's budget around is there an even more. But I think for now, this is a realistic split between what we'd like to need. But obviously, we'll keep an eye on it.
But you're not sorry, you're not sort of limiting it such that if another urgent decision to appoint somebody else showed up, you wouldn't be raiding that pot necessarily.
But as it stands, the pot is what it is. We've been okay by council. We haven't got to make up more money from it. Yeah, we're having conversations with the leadership team around where the pressures are at the moment, and we've addressed the pressures we've got at the moment in terms of making that backfill. So it's not kind of saying about to come out of work next week to say suddenly we need more resource urgently. So I think it's going to work. But yeah, there is already a lot of work going on, and it will pop up in other places as sort of get more and more intense into the LGR work. So I'm not saying what happened at some time in the next few months, but it's not there now.
Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I know this is reports really talking about the allocation of the funding and what needs spending on what needs doing. I guess my concern is around page 43 at the bottom half of that, where it's really talking about the things that need doing that are not funded. which it makes explicit, which is good that that is the case. And I guess that my concern is around the impact on service delivery and projects and everything else we're doing. So paragraph 8.4, the first couple of sentences really highlight that around the reduced need to undertake normal activity. And I think what's the phrase, the mitigate the impact here of the need for non-core projects to be significantly limited. So I guess my question is, we could pick this moving far as well, but how is that going to be, recognize that that's the situation we're in, how's that going to be managed in a sort of transparent way to make sure that officers, the executive, and ultimately the council can have transparency around the consequences, implications of some of those decisions that are going to have to be made, because they're going to be difficult ones around what not to do to create headroom for this. So just wondering how that's going to be handled.
So clearly we already have the council delivery plan, and that's obviously an important document this committee looks at, and then obviously is a starting point for the things that we see as major projects. But I think what sits below that clearly will be the importance of the leadership team looking at, and obviously service directors looking at each area in consultation with executive members to be able to see if there are lower priority areas that we simply do not have the time then to do. And that obviously then that report back process, I think, will be critical here, both in what we actually say to scrutiny, clearly what we say to members more broadly, and obviously what the cabinet looks like, and clearly the leader of the council and others will have with key roles of that. But you're absolutely right, Paul, in making sure that what we say there, and I'll certainly very happily take that back to to cabinet here, is about the importance of being visible where we are making those changes. And I think that visibility and transparency is important, clearly, obviously, to members and to our residents as well, because what's a minor project to one area will be something that's very important to some others, as we know, as you look through all of the different say projects and things and initiatives that we do. There are some things that are relatively small amounts of money, but actually are really important in a particular town, village, community, and so on. So I think in actually making sure that members are aware and residents are aware of the things where we have to make some difficult decisions. But I'm absolutely certainly happy to take away that point about how we make sure and ensure there is that transparency and visibility, because as I say, what we can't be doing is making those sorts of decisions and they're not actually informing people and giving them an opportunity to actually provide views and input.
Yeah, no, exactly that. And I was just trying to make it clear. I'm respecting the roles of all the officers and the executive in making those decisions, but just that is the point around the transparency around what are going to be some difficult choices, I suspect. Thank you.
Thank you both. Do we have any further questions? Councillor Munster.
Thank you, Chair. So just taking each of the recommendations in turn then, I think 2.1 is, of course, county-wide. So there's very little scope for this authority to amend or allocate that £1 million of funding, because there's already an agreement, it would seem, between Hertfordshire County Council and the 10 district and boroughs across the county. But with respect to 2.2, that is certainly where this authority has an awful lot more discretion. And therefore, would there be any objection, speaking about improving transparency and openness and making sure that the decisions of which are proposed are able to benefit from a wide array of different perspectives? Would there be any objection to amending that with there to be consultation with political group leaders in addition to the chair of overview and scrutiny?
I'm certainly happy to take that way and reflect upon that, Ralph. I mean, I think obviously sometimes the importance of working at pace on some of these things is clearly important. But yeah, I mean, I'm certainly, you know, I'm certainly open to very much to taking that away and discussing it, you know, with colleagues, and with officers about how we can do that. I mean, in reality, is that we've already for this year spent a fairly significant part of that sort of allocation, that, you know, because we've got 1 million, you know, we've got £1 million over the, you know, over each year to spend, and obviously we've spent somewhat. So this isn't necessarily going to be so many more, I think, decisions on that actually sort of coming up. I mean, I don't know whether, you know, there are any other things that, you know, that you could. I appreciate that we can't necessarily say too much if it might be in a fairly early gestation stage of things that might be in the pipeline that we haven't yet got to a conclusion on.
No, as I said previously, there's not. I mean, there is lots of pressure on staff out there emerging from LGR, but there's not currently any other areas that I'm aware of, and I hope we'll be told by now, whereby we've got a sudden need for more staff at this stage. That's not to say it won't come in time, but at this stage, it isn't there. But as we saw with the IT and HR staffing, there was a need to react quite quickly. Even, you know, with some very fast recruitment from the HR team, because they were good at recruitment, we're still not quite there yet. We filled one of the posts internally, and now have to refill the posts that fill that internally to get that all sorted. So we're not there yet. So even with that quick work to take some pressure off, it takes time. So yes, I can kind of see the benefit of that wider consultation, but to not detract from the need to take those kind of fairly timely decisions and not prolong too long.
Can I just clarify what it is that you're asking, Councillor, just to be clear? I'm asking you now. Are you asking for consultation before decisions about further spend within that 1 million that's more sort of, as it were, discretionary? That's what you're asking for? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead with your follow-up.
Perfect. Thank you. And I completely appreciate that the council and the administration needs to be able to act at pace in certain circumstances, but of course it's always about striking that balance between, you know, acting with speed and of course sort of acting appropriately. With respect to the potential employment of any additional officers to help and support with LGR or to fill any vacancies that might arise, what is the council intending to do to ensure that we're not in a position come 2028 whereby either this authority or indeed the successor authority is liable to pay any redundancy costs or following the termination of someone's employment?
I'm going to ask Ian to pick up, because clearly, obviously, there are as welcome changes by the Labour government on employment laws. I'm sure you'll support that, Ralph. So yeah, I think, but clearly these posts are fixed term 2-year fixed term contract. But clearly there are changes to employment law coming up, which I think these will, as they would have been appointed before those changes, I think wouldn't necessarily apply to those ones. But Ian, is that something you can help with?
Yeah, I mean, usually yes, the 2-year rule would apply and it'd be fine because we'd be under 2 years because we didn't create them on day one. But yes, there is potential for risk there, but I think the risk of not doing it is even greater, because if we don't get LGR right and we don't get some of this stuff done early, and I'm probably not going to say, yeah, some of these posts, there might be a need for them going forward. IT is a huge task in relation to LGR. HR is obviously just a huge task in relation to LGR. So suddenly thinking that at the 31st of March 2028, these posts will no longer be needed by us for successor authority is probably misplaced. But we are being prudent in terms of saying at the moment, these posts are to 31st of March 2028. But realistically, we might want them going forward. So it might be a nice problem to have at that point, but we can't commit to that last stage, obviously, because we don't want to commit our money beyond that point.
Councillor Billing.
I've got a few questions. I was going to ask whether there, I assume there would be, but if there's a criteria being used to determine whether expenditure should be classified as county-wide staffing costs or training costs. There's a criteria for that.
So there is a county-wide programme, which is currently seen by the Chief Executives Group, which is recruiting up project managers and other staff to support that, and then has input from all the districts and the county in terms of professionals to get that working. In general, those staff that are recruited or have been moved into that project purely for project management are being funded from the central pot, and most of the staff that are there being sort of loaned in kind contributions from the district and county their costs are being kept by the sort of people giving that staff time over to them. There are some exceptions where people are contributing a huge amount of time that they will be then sort of charged into that, so the money will come back to the person sort of lending them that person. So yes, there are mechanisms in place to kind of work out what gets charged to what pots to make sure it's working effectively. But as I sort of said, as we go through the process, it's going to be more and more staff time going into that, and therefore the recharge back out will be less, because actually the entire focus will be LGR compared to what it is now. It's sort of lower percentages.
Next one, in paragraph 8.5, there's a very small mention of the staff being uncertain. But I want to kind of look at the well-being of our staff. I don't see any mention explicitly about that. Is there within the funding potentially going to look at mental health? Because I know from some people they could be very worried and actually could affect their work, this happening. So if any payment will be going towards any kind of mental health well-being within that.
So I think we've already got some quite good resources for staff. We've got an employee assistance program. We have mental health first aids. We've already got a lot of stuff going on for our staff in sort of their well-being and that mental health space. But part of those 2 additional HR staff is to allow the HR manager to contribute to LGR. But also it is fundamentally, it's a case of we will see an increased need for HR as we go through this process, because it's a huge people change process. So that is partly reflecting that, is that additional resource we can need from the HR team to support people as we go through the next, not quite 2 years now, but that next period, and obviously beyond as well.
And finally, just looking at what level of the kind of, I've forgotten the word, the contingency is currently built into the 2 million allocation.
At the moment, there's no real contingency in there. Obviously, if we spent fully against each of those strands, it comes to 2.2 million. So we've also got negative contingency at the moment, but we have to prioritise against each of those. There obviously is a chance to review this when we get to February and setting the budget for 27-28. Certainly, depending how much work we do, and we probably will do more work than this before we get to April 28, pre-vesting day, there will be a need for much greater budgets to come from somewhere, and it will probably be a fair share contribution from each of the districts and county for the work next year. So the rough numbers in terms of potential costs before that point was on order of about 40 million across the county in terms of the submission document to government on the options for LGR. So we could be talking big numbers of additional money at that point to go forward into next year. So there is a chance to revisit it. But we have to wait and see in terms of how that evolves as we go through the process. So yeah, I think there's probably enough in there for this year, but I'm not going to rule out needing more money for next year because it is such a massive project.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chairs. Following probably up from Councillor Dennison, the point around the uncertainty. obviously this is not a question about specifics, but I would imagine in processes like this, there's some references to transition costs. I don't know what was done in terms of the overall business case around the LGR options, but I'm assuming there must be some assumptions baked in around different levels of target organization sizes, and then for potential things like severance costs associated with that. Obviously, that going to this, but what's the approach that's happening to those kinds of costs in terms of the budgeting and financials? Are they assumed to be part of some sort of county-wide pot that would have to be dealt with as and when any situations arise like that, or is that just going to be down to each authority that owns whatever staff are impacted to pick that cost up? And how do we deal with that cost and unknown exposure?
I think it is likely that the vast majority of any severance in terms of redundancy per cost will hit post April 28. Most likely is that we will GP the vast majority of staff across the junior organisations and then deal with any redundancy out the other side because of all the work involved. We cannot get the change done before 1st April 28. We can make good progress towards the change required, but there'll still be more change to happen after that as well. So I think ultimately the costs of redundancy will be borne by the new unitaries, and therefore be a problem for after that point to deal with those costs. And that was what was in the model for the various options for unitaries, was around an assumption that most that those costs would hit sort of year one onwards rather than sort of year zero.
Yeah, okay. And that was built into those models. There's no, for example, magic money tree from central government to cover the costs like that. So it's just got to be absorbed by the target organisation, basically.
Yeah, at the moment we've got the promise of 900,000 per new unitary, so that is between 1.8 and 3.6 million pounds to go into the pot to fund the work we're doing, but we're not aware, and there hasn't been any other examples where there's been more money from government towards the LGR process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Do you want me to read out all the recommendations? Okay. Are we happy that, is everyone happy that they understand the recommendation? So we are recommending all of these to Cabinet, or at least the first three, and that any spend is subject to a cap of 1 million in 26-27 and 2 million overall. Is that okay? Okay. Could I have a proposer for the recommendations then, please? Don't all jump at once. Councillor Billing, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Mason, thank you. Great. Any debate? Councillor Dennis.
Not necessarily debate, but going back to the questions, obviously Councillor Albert agreed to take away Councillor Muns's comments around recommendation 2.2, but I think it makes sense for us to formally note what Councillor Munster said in respect of consultation with group leaders and the chair of overview and scrutiny, and just to put that as a recommendation to Cabinet in our scrutiny report on this particular item. I'm expressing no view, I'm just assisting a colleague.
So, Ralph, do you want to make that a formal amendment to the recommendations?
Go on, why not?
Okay.
So in
you
that,
want to come up with a form of words in that case?
In that case, and we'll be doing this on the hoof. So to recommendation 2.2, that Cabinet approve that up to £1 million of available funding be allocated to additional staffing costs, noting that 450,000 has already been allocated. Any spend can be approved by the Chief Executive in consultation with the leader of the Council, the Executive Member for Resources, the Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny, and group leaders, except where the Constitution already requires different approval processes.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'd probably be looking to Councillor Dennis to potentially second that.
Councillor Dennis, would you like to second?
I will in the interest, Chair, of scrutiny getting done at a sensible time this evening, and without expressing any view, and also noting that Councillor Albert already agreed to take this away and think about it, I think I'm happy to second. Also, speaking non-politically, I think that if any of us were in opposition, and in the past, I think this is the type of thing that we would always put as a scrutiny committee as a suggestion to Cabinet for consideration.
Thank you. In that case, I think we're now debating the amendment, if anybody wants to say anything about it. Councillor Billing.
Just to change it to chair rather than chairman.
Quite right. I actually wrote down chair. I didn't even pick that up. So thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I assume you're happy with that, Councillor Munzer.
If it gets it through, yeah.
It probably is.
Any further comment on this? Let's keep it on the rails. No? All right, let's vote on the amendment then, for the sake of argument.
That amendment is carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so is there any further debate on the amended recommendations? No? Okay, so again, just to briefly summarize, we've discussed about a little about training budget allocation, transparency of decision making going forwards. We have added a clarification to what the recommendation about involving the chair of ONS and group leaders in consultation. We discussed a bit about redundancy costs and how the allocations of sort of county-wide spend versus more local spend will balance out. And we've also touched on staff wellbeing and how that fits in as the processes continue. I hope that's all clear to everybody. So unless there's any further debate, let's vote on the recommendations. Thank you.
That motion is carried unanimously, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, on to item 14, Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report 2025-26. And I will hand over to my fabulous co-chair and predecessor, vice chair and predecessor, Councillor Winchester.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say a few words to summarise our achievements as a committee last year and to express my pleasure in working with you all. As always, and particularly at a time when this council has several major projects underway, scrutiny is an essential process that improves decisions and provides significant insight and challenge across many portfolios. This year, we've examined 30 items and made 26 recommendations to Cabinet. Being both cross-party and apolitical, we recognise this isn't the space to rehash decisions, but to refine and improve them. And I'm very grateful to members of this group for their diligent engagement to this important work, from the attention to detail at our regular meetings to the additional commitment given by our Task and Finish group, led by Councillor Munzer. We've also reflected this year on the way we work and have a continued appreciation for transparent and cooperative working and a focus on building mutually respectful relationships between colleagues across the council, members, officers and portfolio leads. And as we move towards becoming a unitary authority, there will be a lot for this committee to consider. And I'd like to wish John the very best of luck as chair this year and to thank members and all the officers for the support you've given me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Councillor Winchester? No questions? Okay, I recognise it's getting to that sort of time. In that case, the recommendations are that the committee consider and comment on the annual report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee 25-26 as attached in Appendix 1 prior to consideration by Council. And 2.2, that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommend to full Council that your annual report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee 2025-26 as attached in Appendix 1 be noted. I am happy to propose that. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Munzer, thank you.
Happy to say.
Is there any debate? Councillor Munzer.
Thank you. Just very quickly, just want to put on record my thanks to Councillor Winchester for the way in which she chaired scrutiny last year. I think they were certainly very, very big shoes to fill following Councillor Barnes, but I think that she has done an absolutely sterling job. And I also want to just express my thanks once again for her support with the Section 106 Task and Finish Group. I think we have a piece of work there, a report that is something that all of us on the Scrutiny Committee can be very, very proud of. So thank you very much. And of course, thank you to all of our officers who have facilitated this, and of course, all of the executive members and our senior officials who come and face the wrath of scrutiny. So thank you for your time.
We're not wrathful, Councillor Wright Mason.
Yes, no, just to echo Councillor Munson's points, especially about the Section 106 report. I sadly wasn't able to be at the meeting where it was recommended, but just to put on record, I thought it was a very good example of cross-party scrutiny. I thought it was a really good report. Yeah, and hopefully there'll be more in the future because I think it's a good model. So yeah.
Thank you. And I'll briefly add my thanks, many thanks to Claire for chairing last year and for a very collaborative working relationship, which we're happily continuing this year with the roles reversed, having swapped chairs. Massive thanks to Jeevan in continuation for everything last year and as we look forward to the rest of this year. So and thank you to you, Councillor Munster, for chairing the Section 106 Task and Finish Group, which is the first Task and Finish Group this council has undertaken in a little while. So, and thanks, of course, to all members of the committee last year, and it's good to see many of you back this year. Okay. Unless there's any further debate, I'm not seeing any indications. Can we vote on that, please?
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you, Robbie. And finally, but importantly, because we must make sure that we have a good programme of work for this year, because without that, this committee won't achieve what it could achieve. I will hand over to Jeevan Mann to present the Overview and Scrutiny Work Programme 26-27. Jeevan.
Members were invited to undertake scrutiny training on Tuesday, 12th of May, 2026. Following the training, members developed the current work programme attached at Appendix A to the report. Items for September meeting include annual review of safeguarding, annual council learning and development report, LGR future plans update. A new item's been added, and that's the allocation of MHCLG Homelessness Grant Fund. So just a reminder, the work programme is a living document and iterative, so we'll try to keep you up to date with any changes as we go along. Members are invited to raise items for consideration via email, in person, or via the item referral form. As discussed during the training, there are other formats which may be more relevant and considered for the delivery of an update, including site visits, spotlight reviews, and members-led research, to name a few. Members should outline the why they want to consider an item at ONS to both assist officers, executives in preparation of reports, as well as help members track if their objectives to the review of the item have been met. If members have specific questions they want addressing either as part of the report or by officers during the meeting, please provide these in advance so that we can coordinate a shared response from officers and executives, and a detailed answer can be provided during the course of the meeting. The forward plan for 15th of May is attached at Appendix B to the report. Updates can be found on the website. Decisions and Monitoring Tracker. The Decisions and Monitoring Tracker is attached at Appendix C6, which details each recommendation which was made to Cabinet. Recommendations for the following items were resolved at the meeting of Cabinet on Tuesday, 14th of April. Council Delivery Plan 2025-26 Quarter 3 update, lease on Letchworth multi-storey car park, regulation of Investigatory Power Act annual review, and Section 106 Task and Finish Group. That's all. Do members have any questions?
Councillor Munster.
Thank you, Chair. not a question in so much as a recommendation for the work programme moving forward. I was very, very grateful for the opportunity to appear before Cabinet and to present the Section 106 report. And I think the vast majority of the feedback which was given at that meeting was constructive. In terms of making sure, having a progress update as to the progress which Cabinet has made following that report. If colleagues are content, I would like to propose that to take place on Tuesday, the 10th of November. That's just over 6 months after the report was published was presented to Cabinet. And one would have thought that 6 months is a significant period of time in which for Cabinet colleagues and officers to have thoroughly considered the responses, particularly when you also factor in the local plan review, which is currently underway. And one of the reasons why we had the 106 inquiry in the first place was to ensure that it feeds into the next iteration of the local plan.
Thank you, Councillor Munson. We can certainly look at putting that on the work programme. Does anyone else have any questions, suggestions, or comments? I know it's late, but I think it's really important that we are clear about, I think as Stephen said, that we're clear about what it is that we want to scrutinise and when, so that we're as effective as we can be. And with these 2 items coming up, so LGR future plans, obviously we've talked quite a bit about LGR already this evening. I think we're going to continue to do that, spoiler alert. But it would be good to, LGR future plans is essentially the entire political future of our area, so maybe that needs narrowing down slightly. So if anyone has any thoughts on what particularly we might look at in that context, I'd be interested to hear it. There's also, with regards to the allocation of the homelessness grant, thoughts on what we might scrutinise, think about whether we might get somebody in, perhaps external. We don't have to just talk amongst ourselves. We can get external people in to think about these issues and give us perspectives. So I would encourage you to think about how we might be able to make the most impact. Retrospectively, last year, I went over every item that we looked at over the course of the year, made a little spreadsheet, ranked everything about significance, significance, impact, and timeliness. I think it's worth thinking about whether we're being effective. Some things I think were very effective on last year. Some things maybe we could have done better if we'd timed them differently or looked at them differently. So the more we think about it in advance, the more effective I think we can be. Councillor Wright Mason, you're very patiently listening to my sermon. Go ahead.
That's right. You encouraged the thought, so thank you. Yeah, just terms, obviously I'm happy to have more to think about, more, I don't know, substantive proposal on this, but with the merger of, say, Settle into Settle Paradigm, I think there's been some concerns I've had from residents, and I know quite a lot of colleagues have, on kind of how that's worked and how that's affected our relationship. So it would be interesting if we could possibly get them in, or any other registered provider, to sort of speak about our relationship and how we can improve it moving forward.
Excellent. That's the stuff. Councillor Mason.
Which prompts me to think, I think in the past, when I've sat on this committee before, I think we have had Settle come in to talk in their own right. They came in to give us an overview and what they were doing. So there's plenty of precedent for doing that. And I think now would be a good time to do it.
Any other thoughts for the time being? Councillor Winchester.
Let's ask for a bit of clarification about the crime and disorder briefing in January. I know we've got 6 months to think about it, but we want to give the constabulary time to collect data. Is there a deadline when we would normally expect to give them a topic?
We usually write to them November time, just to, well, post November's meeting, just to say these are the kind of items that we would be considering. But our colleagues in our senior leadership team have also said that they might be able to provide some steer to this committee with regards to issues that they see locally that you might want to consider.
I think we made a note that we would only give them one topic this year. for sure.
Yes, I think 2 was too many.
2 was probably too many.
Councillor Mason.
On the police one, again, in the past, we've had very good meetings of police with this committee. I slightly bulk when I heard data mentioned, because one thing I've noticed with the constabulary, that collecting data they are extremely good at. And sometimes when we've had meetings with them, it tends to be too data driven, and just to ensure that when we do get them in, it's not just a whole series of statistics. Interesting though that, I mean, quite seriously, interesting though it is, I think there, as a scrutiny committee, we might want to go a bit wider, a bit deeper than things. It's just in terms of them preparing for it, maybe. If that's a common held view, as I say, it's not just about a group of statistics.
So you mean focusing on impact rather than just numbers?
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame them at all, but it's not a dig at the police. I think they are incredibly data driven.
Sure.
But to get value from it, I think we need to just go a little bit further. I say.
Yeah, it's not about not having the numbers, it's about setting them in context. Thank you. Councillor Munson.
I know that we haven't even thought about what's happening at the next meeting, let alone sort of what's going to be happening in January of next year, but potentially as a bit of a placeholder at the moment, and it depends on developments that take place in Westminster and at the Home Office. But we might be wanting to focus on the impact of policing reorganisation on local community policing, and what officers foresee the challenges to be, and how best local officials and local communities can feed into policing priorities in their communities. But of course, that is very dependent on what the government, what the Home Office decides to do with the merging of police forces.
Yes, good point. Any further thoughts? Except of your beds. Stephen.
Just back to the LGR item. So officers have requested if there's any key requirements for that report. So if there's anything that you want to see in the report specifically, if you could raise that now, because there's going to be a lot of officers going to be on leave over the summer period, and just want to make sure that they can prep all the data for you.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. I've been pulling faces, not because I'm tired, but because I'm desperately trying to think of something meaningful to narrow down that really broad LGR topic for September. I think the challenge is we don't know what the unitary that we're moving into is going to look like, which does make it kind of hard to come up with something intelligent, because the different configurations, the different size, will mean that different service areas, different provisions, different assets face different risks, different likelihoods of being continued, etc. But I think if I was to try and narrow a broad topic into something still broad but less broad, maybe it would be useful. For example, if we could have reports from our green space team on the protections that will continue in respect of our nature and ecological assets, what might be at risk, what parks and playgrounds are going to look like, and potentially any work that we need to start doing now around encouraging new stewardship models for parks and playgrounds. I'm picking on those because, reflecting back 10 years ago, one of the first scrutiny items I had was a green space strategy, which recommended the closure and loss of a significant number of our play spaces across the district. And I would hate to see local government reorganisation deprive children and families of healthy, safe spaces to be active. And sort of, I think similarly as well, it might be worthwhile reflecting on housing, homelessness provision, the continued support of those organisations with whom we've maintained memoranda of understanding. So, for example, Citizens Advice Bureau, I think, is pretty much the only one. But what impact is LGR going to have on that? Linking through to the budget conversation we had this evening, maybe the role of our community forums across the district is an interesting thing to look at in particular as we get more, hopefully, emerging intelligence around neighbourhood governance models coming through from central government, and is perhaps there a way that we can start to position our community forums to fit within emerging thoughts around neighbourhood governance. So yeah, those are there you go. It's a really, really broad area and there's lots of unknowns. I'm also really tired tonight, Chair, so apologies if it doesn't all make sense.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's a great start for 10. Thank you. Councillor Ward.
I was just thinking maybe one specific thing the directors could focus on is what I mentioned earlier on, which is talking about the impact on service delivery and to our customers, residents and projects.
Potentially a big topic in itself, but clearly a very important one.
It's something we're in control of, as opposed to lots of unknowns.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, any further thoughts? But yes, all right. Here's someone champing the bit. All right. Is everyone clear what our recommendations are? Do you want me to read them out? No, you don't want me to. What's that? You're clear, or you want me to read them out? Yes. Okay, I will quickly read out the recommendations. So that the committee prioritises topics for inclusion in the work programme attached as Appendix 1, and where appropriate, determines the high-level form and timing of scrutiny input. 2.2, that the committee, having considered the most recent iteration of the forward plan as attached at Appendix 2, suggests a list of items to be considered at its meetings in the coming civic year, and that 2.3, that the committee note the decisions and monitoring log as attached in Appendix 3. Councillor Munster, I think you're raring to propose that.
Delighted to propose that, Chair.
Lovely. And can I have a suitably enthusiastic seconder? Oh, Claire, very good, well done. Thank you. I've got loads of seconders. Is there any debate, Paul? You just wanted to second. Sadie, likewise. Okay, good. Is there any debate? It's not really a major topic of debate, is it? Good. All right. In that case, let's vote. Thank you.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you all very much for your time this evening. So I will close the meeting. Our next meeting will take place on Tuesday, the 8th of September, 2026. I hope you all have a great summer.